The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Yes, it is a Thursday, but no, there is no Tony Show. There is a Tony Show today. Tony is working today. He will be off tomorrow. So we'll do a 3-hour show tomorrow, 2-hour show today. We're going to talk to Joe Posnanski. He is a best-selling author. He has written a number of books, including Paterno, which I read, several baseball books, and his latest is Why We Love Baseball, A History in 50 Moments. And I actually was part of a presentation over the weekend at the Jewish Community Center where he did a book signing, and we went about an hour talking about the book and stories in the book. We won't spend an hour with Joe today, but we'll spend 15 minutes or so going through what I think is an excellent book as he tours the country and promotes the book as baseball season has come to an end, although there is still a lot going on with off-season business, including where is Shohei Ohtani going to land as a free agent. The general managers meetings are going on right now. I guess they've just wrapped up. Did you tell me this, Rex, that they had to stop early because everybody got sick?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and we don't know what it was?
They said they somehow figured out it was a virus, not food poisoning.
Well, I mean, I don't know how important these days it is for everybody to be together in the same room with instant communication, but there's the developing Strasburg thing is so bizarre because we'd been told that September 9th there's going to be a news conference at Nats Park to announce that Strasburg is retiring. And then I think only like a day before we found out, no, we're not going to have a news conference. And it appears to be a standoff on money. What else? Scott Boras, his agent, is saying, no, you got to pay the whole $105 million left on the contract. And the Nationals are saying, well, why don't you retire? And as Mike Rizzo put it the other day, it's procedural. I don't know exactly what that means. He didn't elaborate, but somehow or another they'll get it worked out. The real issue for the Nationals is not the money. It is the roster spot. And because they haven't made any arrangements either to release him or have him retire, he's taking up one of the 40-man spots. Not that that's going to be earth-shattering, but, you'd like to have that extra spot on the roster, and Strasburg, who will never pitch again, is taking that up. Anyway, I want to do some football here, and I saw a story today which is not major, but I think if you dig deep, it shows a real problem in the NFL. And as you know, Daniel Jones is out for the year for the Giants with a torn ACL. And the starting quarterback this week against the Dallas Cowboys, and the Giants are 16.5-point underdogs. 16.5-point underdogs. The starter will be DeVito, not Danny DeVito, but Tommy DeVito. He's been their third-string quarterback, undrafted out of Illinois. And the big news here is that he becomes the 10th different rookie starting quarterback this season, which breaks a record set in 2019. And remember, we're only halfway through a season. So halfway through a season, we have broken a record for most rookie starting quarterbacks. And if you look around the league and you see who's starting outside of here, where Sam Howell hasn't missed a snap, it's just remarkable. And Peter King had this in his column on Monday. He said, these are the names of the quarterbacks who started games last Sunday. Clayton Tune, who was Arizona's 5th-round pick at Cleveland, didn't make it through the game. Jaron Hall, Minnesota's 5th-rounder at Atlanta, didn't make it through the game. Aiden O'Connell, Vegas's rookie 4th-rounder, he's actually won the job. Tyson Badgett, who will start tonight in this marquee matchup between Carolina and Chicago, 3 wins between the two teams. And then unknowns like Will Levis, Kenny Pickett, Taylor Heineke, Jordan Love, Sam Howell, C.J. Stroud, and Bryce Young, who will be the starter tonight for Carolina with their sparkling 1-7 record. And I think that you have to look at this and say, this idea of protecting quarterbacks that the NFL has gone so far with ain't working. It's not working. And I've been saying this for weeks now. We're going to have a Super Bowl where 2 street free agents are the starting quarterbacks, not backup quarterbacks. We've had that in the past, and we've had, guys like Nick Foles win a Super Bowl. And, we had that with the Giants as well. His name is escaping me now. But the Super Bowl that they won in 1990, Jeff Hostetler. And I think that's a little different situation. And these guys were backups all year long. They became starters kind of late in the season, in the case of Hostetler with about 4 or 5 games to go. I think the same thing with Foles. And at least you had that continuity. But the way things are going and the way these quarterbacks go down and these unknowns who step up and play, it's not hurting the ratings. The ratings are still very good, but it's not what I think the NFL intends, because as we often say, the starting quarterback position is the most important in sports these days. The starting pitching used to be important. It really isn't anymore because starters generally go 6 innings or less. But starting quarterbacks are meaningful. And if you have one, and if you have a great one like Tom Brady, you see what a difference he can make. And when you're seeing guys like Tyson Bagent getting starts, Aiden O'Connell, and now the Giants, who have a quarterback duo of Tommy DeVito, and Matt Barkley, who is the well-traveled Barkley, 33 years old, last played for Buffalo in 2020, so he hasn't taken the field in 3 years. He was originally a 4th-round pick of Philadelphia in 2013 at USC. He's played for the Eagles, Bears, and Bills over his 10 years. I do remember this, too. He was a starter as a true freshman at USC. And when he decided to come back for his senior year after being a starter for 3 years, there was grand celebration for that. But as an NFL player, he's just a guy. He's a jag. And he now is the backup quarterback for a quarterback that nobody's heard of until the last couple of weeks, Tommy DeVito. What a mess. What a mess. Oh, and by the way, the game tonight, as I mentioned, it's 1-7 Carolina at 2-7 Chicago. And Al Michaels, who's going to call this game, was interviewed in the New York Post yesterday. And Andrew Marchand does the media column. And he said to Al, he said, let me ask you a question. Here it is. Excuse me. Marchand said to Al asked him about retirement. And Michaels said to Marchand, let me ask you a question. How do I sound to you? And Marchand said he told him he thinks he's throwing about 85 miles an hour. On Thursday, he doesn't sound as enthusiastic as he did when he was doing the big Sunday night game. And, pointed out that the big game that Will Levis had the other week, last week, in their loss to the Steelers, he did not sound as excited. And Michaels, who's 78 years old, said your assessment is fair. And he's been criticized now since that playoff game that he did between Jacksonville and the great comeback that the Chargers had. He's been criticized about that, and he's digging in his heels. He's 78 years old. The ratings are up for Thursday Night Football. More and more people, I'm sure, are buying Amazon just because of that, and that's the intent of that. He's making reportedly about $1 million a year. And he said to Marchand, as far as I'm concerned, I'm doing next year. There's no question about that in my mind. And he pointed to Keith Jackson, who, said he was going to retire, then went 7 more years. And even Jackson himself said his last game, which was a spectacular game between Texas and USC, he didn't have his fastball anymore. And Michaels was asked, well, would you go that route? And he said, no. Look, when I'm done, it's the way John Madden was done. 2 words and a contradiction. It's time. I don't need any parade or that nonsense. So there you go. He didn't say contradiction, he said contraction. Learn how to read it there, Andy. And then, I think that Marchand makes a good point here. This is the way I felt about Al in watching him now do Thursday night. He gives off the scent that he knows he's working off Broadway. He said, Marchand said he tried to keep his NBC Sunday Night Football job, but the network moved on to Mike Tirico. He was in line for ESPN's Monday night before Joe Buck got it. He tried to score Fox's top job, which would have allowed him to break his tie with Pat Summerall with 11 TV Super Bowl calls. Fox went with Kevin Burkhardt. Michaels thinks he sounds basically the same as always. I think people would dispute that. I also have read that Bob Kraft pushed hard for Al to go to Fox, and they decided to go with Burkhardt, and the Super Bowl ratings were the greatest ever. So you don't decide, I don't think, whether you lost your fastball. Other people do. Your employers decide that, and in some ways they have. The networks, Fox could have had him, ESPN could have had him, NBC could have hung on to him. None of that. And now he's working off Broadway on Thursday night on a stream. All right, let me get to this on Eric Bieniemy, because I think this is very significant and well written today by Michael Phillips in the Washington Times. And he discusses how pass-happy Washington has been with Eric Bieniemy, who was, at one time in his life, a running back. And he says, among the notable numbers, Washington throws the ball 65% of the time on 1st and 10, the 5th highest rate in the NFL, one spot ahead of the Chiefs. Howell is on pace, Sam Howell, on pace to drop back 795 this season, which would break an NFL record. Wow. Howell leads the league in passes of 10 yards or fewer with 251 such completions. Reed's quarterback Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City is second with 241. And on 4th down with 2 yards or fewer, the Commanders have passed on 5 of their 7 attempts. And apparently Ron Rivera is okay with this. He has turned all of the offense over to Bieniemy. He's got total autonomy, it seems, over the offense. And this was Rivera when he was asked about that trend and how Eric Bieniemy has become this pass-happy offensive coordinator.
Well, I started my coaching career, my positional coaching career under Andy Reid. And so just understanding what that mentality is and what Coach Reid's mentality was, and I know it's rubbed off a lot on EB, to be quite honest. I see the extended handoff attitude. I also see that, we do some things in terms of just trying to catch the defense anticipating something, and that was always something that was big for Coach as well. And I know that EB has carried that over as well. And having been part of that success that Andy had early on, I can see it. And I see a lot of positives, a lot of parallels right now. I really do. And the thing that's very exciting for us both has been the growth and development of the quarterback. I mean, Sam has been terrific. I think the players around him are getting it as well and understanding these things. I think we've all had some aha moments, just saying, okay, I get it, I understand that part of it. So as we continue to grow and do those things, I think the best thing is we can just continue to develop. I'm pretty excited about who this team can become.
You didn't think he'd go through an answer to a question without talking about Sam Howell. I mean, he always takes it to Howell. Here's Howell himself, asked about Bieniemy and asked about what he's observed in half a season playing for him and why things are now starting to click.
Everyone sees how hard he works, and everyone can tell just how much he puts into it, just by the time he spends in the building and just how detailed everything is. He just works super hard. And obviously, in games, I think he's in a good rhythm right now as far as play calling, and he really knows what is working for us. And he knows how to use our strengths. And I think that's shown the past few weeks, and we just got to try to continue to get better and continue to finish. We played good at times, but I think the last 2 games we could have played a lot better in the fourth quarter. So we just got to try to continue to sustain those good games and finish the game.
You and your teammates have talked about the run game improving the last couple of weeks. Why do you think that is, and how does that help you specifically?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a good run game helps the passing game, and that obviously helps me, helps everybody get open. There's more space on the field, and I just think we're doing a good job of being balanced, and I think that's what is helping our running game. And obviously, I think when teams look at us, they think we like to throw the ball a lot. Obviously, just from what our numbers say, but we can still run the ball. We got a good old line. They do a good job in the running game. Good tight ends that can block, and we got some running backs that know how to run the football. So I think the more we can use those guys, the more we can be balanced, the better we'll be. And I think, especially on Sunday, we did a good job of that, of being balanced and throwing some screens in there as well, and just, keeping the defense on their heels.
I've been saying this all season. They are underutilizing an excellent running back in Brian Robinson. Now, he did fumble last week, and that's bad. But I think you got to give them the ball 20 times a game, and they're not doing that on a consistent basis. A couple of player comments. John Allen, who's been on one playoff team here since arriving in 2017. This really sets up, and who would have thought a few weeks ago that it would look this way, but if the Commanders win this game, they get to 5-5, and they're very much in the thick of the wild card race against the team that they're competing with to get into the playoffs. But Allen says that's not the way he's thinking right now.
No, I didn't know they were ahead of us. I try not to get caught up in that and focus on that because there's just so many other things that I'm focused on right now. Playing good football being one of them. So, I'll leave that for you guys and the coaches. And me, I just try to go out there week in and week out, regardless of the situation, play the same brand of football.
Okay. Terry McLaurin, pretty much the same thing. That's the defensive captain view. This is the offensive captain view on this being a potential playoff picture game.
I don't think we're really in the mindset of this is like a playoff game or, we have to beat this team to get in the playoffs. We really have to focus on the opponent that we have for this week, and it happens to be the Seahawks. I think when you look too far ahead or trying to plan for the future, you leave yourself susceptible to not focusing on the details. And going against an opponent like this, I think is a great test for us to see can we go on the road and put another good week back-to-back and try to get a win. I think that's extremely important for us. If we want to have aspirations to make it in the playoffs and have a chance to have success there, we have to start stringing wins together and being consistent against playoff caliber teams. And so we have the opportunity this week, and I think we're looking forward to it.
And Commanders are 6-point underdogs for that game. I was going to play something here from Tony and Kendrick Perkins from PTI yesterday. I'll save that for later on in the show, but it was pretty funny about how defenseless the Wizards are. Last night, they gave up 116 points, which for them is lockdown defense. And they beat another bad defensive team, and they scored, 132 as they knocked off the Hornets. It's a home and home. They're going to play here tomorrow night. But, that tells you what this season has been about. When 116 points given up looks good, looks like a good defensive game. Kyle Kuzma had 33. And by the way, Bradley Beal finally played last night for the Suns, but he was on a minutes restriction because he's coming off a back injury. And he did have, 14 points, missed a bunch of shots, and, again, couldn't go in the overtime because he's not supposed to play more than 30 minutes. 13 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and the Suns just held on to beat Chicago. It was in Chicago by 1. $50 million a year player. Played in 50 games last year for the Wizards. We wonder how many he's going to play this year for the Suns. All right, coming up, a little bit of a kerfuffle from what happened in the Monday night game with Troy Aikman saying something about Quinnen Williams and Quinnen Williams cracking back on him yesterday. We'll talk about that and more, much more on the Commanders in the 10 o'clock hour. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Got Tony today. Tony on a Thursday. Troy Aikman is not a critical analyst. Most of them really aren't, but he's not really a tough guy when it comes to talking about other teams that stink. But he was really down on the Jets on Monday. And the last time I heard Aikman that critical of a team goes back to 2003. And it was warranted. It was the Steve Spurrier Redskins at the time. They were playing at Dallas. It's Spurrier's second year, and he's about to check out mentally, and he resigned at the end of the season. And they were bad against Dallas. I mean, it was Bill Parcells' Cowboys against Steve Spurrier's Redskins. A bit of a mismatch, though. Spurrier was a great college coach. The NFL wasn't for him. And they just looked awful that day, as they did against good teams that year. They won 5 games. They won 7 the year before, but 5-11, not too good. And so as the game is going on, you go, man, he's really got it in for Spurrier. He's just destroying him. I know it's bad, but we've been watching other games during the season, and the announcers aren't as tough. Now, Buck and Aikman were the number 1 team then for Fox, and maybe they felt like they were insulted getting this crapola team playing the Cowboys, but it was on the schedule, so you play it. Cowboys always get eyeballs, and this is an old-time rivalry, so why not bring it back? And as it turned out, Spurrier on Saturday, and this is when I don't know if they do it now Saturday, they might be Friday, but in those days, the coach would get together with the announcers the day before the game, and they would discuss a variety of things, some of them off the record, but just, kind of get a sense of the team and how they're feeling. And it happens with all the announced teams. And as the story goes, Spurrier was in his hotel room watching the Gators on TV, watching Florida play. It might have been a big game, might have been the Georgia game, I don't know. But he gets the call, okay, Fox guys are ready to meet with you. And Spurrier says, I'm watching the game. I go, well, Coach, this is league rules. You have to follow them. This is when the meeting was set up. They're ready to go now, and you're not there. So Spurrier comes, and as the story goes, he just gave him a bunch of coach speak, a lot of cliches, no real inside information, and wanted to get back to watching the Gators as fast as he could. And so Buck and Aikman were both reportedly pissed about that, and they let him have it on the air as the game was going on. I don't know if that was the case with the Jets on Monday night, and they were bad. No, there's no question. They were horrible against the Chargers, but Aikman was tough. And he also said this about tackle Quinnen Williams, and not that it drew much attention, but it did yesterday. We'll get to that in a moment. This was Aikman on Monday night as the Jets are playing the Chargers.
Quinnen Williams is having an impact on games in the pressure that he's able to get and the double teams that he attracts, and he opens things up for all of these other players. So Quinnen Williams, he keeps telling Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich they got to come up with some ways to give him some single opportunities so he can get some sacks. He says he's the highest paid decoy in football.
Highest paid decoy in football. Now, he is highly paid. In the offseason, Williams signed a 4-year, $96 million contract. He had 12 sacks last year. This year, he's just has a half a sack through 9 games. Yesterday, player availability, and Williams was talking to the media, answering a bunch of questions. And after the questioning wrapped up, after the media was through with him, Williams wasn't through with the media and wanted to throw this in.
Can I say something real quick? I seen something like Troy Aikman said that I said something about being a decoy. Like, I never said that. Like, I never talked to Troy Aikman. I never said that to Troy Aikman. Like, I don't know where he got that from. Like, I never came out of my mouth that I was the highest paid decoy or something like that he said on Monday night or something like that. Yeah. So I never said that. Like, I never talked to him before the game. I never alluded to that. Like, it's never been out of my mouth. So
you never had a conversation?
Like, I never had a conversation with him at all. So to hear him say that I said that is kind of like upsetting that he would lie on me like that or say that I said that. So that's kind of weird to me. So.
It was a little misleading what he said.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, for sure. It was definitely misleading.
All right, let's listen to this again. Let's go back to this. This is Aikman, Monday night, what he said about Quinnen Williams. Nowhere in this do I hear Aikman say that he had a conversation with Williams. This is, again, Aikman, Monday night.
Quinnen Williams is having an impact on games in the pressure that he's able to get and the double teams that he attracts, and he opens things up for all of these other players. So Quinnen Williams, he keeps telling Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich they got to come up with some ways to give him some single opportunities so he can get some sacks. He says he's the highest paid decoy in football.
Yeah. Do you hear anything, Rex, there where Aikman references a conversation with Williams about that?
No.
No, it sounds to me like that came from Robert Saleh, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's complimenting him, isn't he?
He is to a degree, though he's kind of making him out to be a whiner, maybe. I don't know.
But he said he's like making an impact. That's what he leads with.
And that's exactly what Robert Saleh is saying publicly. He says, unfortunately, we live in a society where sack production is the measure of how good a player is, and it's not even close. Williams is wrecking games. And that's actually the role of a defensive tackle. That's what he's supposed to do, to free things up for the defensive ends. And this is part of the problem, maybe the biggest problem, that occurred when Mike Shanahan got here in 2010 and went to Albert Hainsworth and said, you're going to be tying up men in the middle so our defensive ends can get sacks. And Hainsworth, being the selfish, slovenly pig that he was, said, no, I got to have my sacks. And that's what led to all the trouble, and eventually they flushed him out of here. But Quinnen Williams, he's reacting to something that probably wasn't there, and I think it might dig into a larger issue that the coach is saying to Aikman and Buck, because, again, this is what happens 2 days before the game, that the coach sits down with the announcers, and maybe this is Saleh saying to Buck and Aikman, yeah, I know the numbers are down for Quinnen Williams, but he's doing what we want him to do. And he's told me that he feels like a highly paid decoy. That could be it. I don't want to read too much into it, but it's Howard Cosell used to do a lot of that. I had lunch with, I talked to. He didn't talk to anybody. He would make up a lot of stuff. But in this particular case, I think it's misdirected on the part of Williams, and I think he needs to have a conversation with Troy Aikman. I think Aikman needs to call him and say, you're accusing me of lying on the air, which it doesn't sound like Aikman's doing that. He's saying what Williams is maybe telling people, but he never says in that comment there that Williams said it to him. So hopefully they'll get that all taken care of. Phillies are going to go with Bryce Harper at first base. Baseball operations director Dave Dombrowski said yesterday that the front office and manager Rob Thompson have come to the conclusion that Harper was the best option at first base. He made 36 starts there this past season after Rhys Hoskins tore his ACL during spring training. And I think it makes sense for that to happen. Harper wants it to happen. He said, I feel good at first base working with Bobby Dickerson, who is the infield coach every single day, getting me out there, just trying to be good for the guys in the infield. I don't think he's ever going to be a great fielder. And remember, he started out as a catcher. He was a high school catcher. He was a catcher in his 1 year at a junior college. If you don't remember, Harper needed to ramp things up to get to the draft before they changed the rules. So he was able to get the maximum amount of money. He came out of junior college at a time when you're supposed to be coming out of high school. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated after his sophomore year. And rather than come back to high school for 2 more years where he'd never get a pitch to see, he went and played junior college, got his GED, and was drafted by the Nationals a year early. And so, he came to the majors when he was 19 years old. And he was converted from catcher to outfielder. And, he got hurt a lot early on because he ran into the wall and made some bad decisions on things, and eventually became, I guess, a pretty decent outfielder. But one of his strengths was his arm. That's why he was a catcher. And he was pretty good at throwing people out. Then he had the Tommy John surgery, and now he's playing first base, and that's probably where he's going to finish his career. I would think that at 31, that's where he's going to be. And I just think of Ryan Zimmerman. Now, Zimmerman's not going to the Hall of Fame, and Harper probably will get there if he continues on this trajectory. But moving to first base is not something that we thought would happen with either one of them. I thought Harper would stay in the outfield for a long time. I actually thought at one point, and maybe this will still happen if he struggles over the course of a season, he'd become a full-time DH. But when you're paying him that kind of money, I don't know. I guess DHs can be as valuable as a position player. It just seems like when you got a guy with the $300 million contract, you want him to play first base and hit. Although Shohei Ohtani, at least for the next year, is going to be just a designated hitter wherever he goes. And we could find out in the next week or so that it's going to be a contract that's record-setting. It almost certainly will be, and could top $500 million. But, Bryce Harper going to first base for the Philadelphia Phillies. And I saw this yesterday. Rex, you're not that far removed from this. Remember the admissions process for college? Were you stressed by this?
A little bit.
Yeah? Okay.
Not terribly.
You went to Miami of Ohio. Was that your first choice?
I didn't really have like I wasn't dying to go anywhere.
You weren't dying, but where else did you apply?
I applied to Maryland, didn't get in.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have gone there if I had got in.
Would you? Okay. Yeah. Did you get waitlisted for the second? They still do that? Wait you for the second semester? Yeah.
Florida State I applied to.
Florida State. Did you make a reach? Like, some people just apply to Harvard for the hell of it? No.
I applied to USC.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Didn't get in.
Yeah. Anyway, there's something now called the Common Application, which offers admission from 70 colleges and universities based on states where the students live and the grade point average they report. The offers are targeting those who would be first-generation college students or come from families with significant financial need. 5 public universities in Virginia and Maryland are among the institutions participating with direct admission. So you fill out some forms, essentially, and all the colleges look at this, 70 schools, and if you match up, they'll put you in. You don't have to go through. I remember the stress about writing your essay, and your parents are on you. Did you do your essay yet? Did you write it yet? No, you didn't have that.
I remember having to write one for high schools, but not for college.
Really? Yeah, things change. Oh, you had to write an essay, and you had to fill out all the application forms. And now, I guess colleges are so desperate for students that they have this program where you don't even have to really apply anymore. You just fill. It's like a credit report, and they look at it. The application also includes an essay prompt, and some schools ask for multiple essays, but some don't. Some don't ask for them at all. Students who create an account and fill out enough academic information can get an offer from schools that want them, even if the students haven't yet applied. In most recent trials, 14 schools offered direct admission to 33,000 students, according to the Common App. More than 800 eventually accepted those invites. Now, I remember this, and this will probably make you crazy, but this is where Maryland was in the 70s. Maryland, and it wasn't just my high school. I talked to friends my age. Maryland would show up in your cafeteria, and they would have people at a table with like lists, and all you had to do was sign up, and they would check your grade point average. But if you had a C, you were in.
Wow.
If you had a C average, you went to Maryland, and I don't even remember that there was a minimum on SAT scores. I guess you get automatically like 400 for signing your name. And I don't think you had to crack 1,000 to get in.
Wow.
Yeah. and now, and some of the reason that it's so hard to get into now is the athletic success. Things really ramped up after they won the national championship in 2002.
You think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, there was a time when Maryland was like the safety school. Like, okay, yeah, you didn't get in wherever else you wanted to go with like a USC for you. And you went to Maryland. Okay, well, everybody else is going to Maryland. I'm going to Maryland. Now it's hard to get in. It's really hard to get in, although colleges, especially after the pandemic, are down in enrollment. And that's why they have this basically a portal for you to put your name in it and see if people are interested in you. Interesting. All right, Ron Rivera responds to what Chase Young said earlier this week about how the culture is so different in San Francisco. And Dan Wetzel of Yahoo on what is a story that could be breaking at any minute, what the NCAA and or the Big Ten is going to do about Michigan. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. And we do have a Tony show today. Tony on a Thursday. He's taking tomorrow off, so he's coming up at 11 o'clock. We'll get to what Dan Wetzel said about this Michigan investigation and whether Jim Harbaugh is going to be suspended. Also, a pretty cool story from Jeannie Buss, owner of the Lakers, on whether or not she dated Dennis Rodman. Not surprisingly, he said they did date. She's got another explanation of that. And we'll get to that. A couple of things to clean up from the last hour. And thank you all for listening and keeping tabs on these things. And you can always tweet me at Andy Pollin1. That's Andy Pollin1, ANDYPOLLIN1. And Michael Harden says, you are right. It has been 50 years for the Capitals, and I forgot about this, but during the 2004-2005 season, there was no season at all. So next year will be the Capitals' 50th season. And good for you, Rex, for recognizing that there was a gap. I totally forgot about that. And really, it's amazing how life just kind of moves on. Like, we've had work stoppages in the NFL. Back in 1982, it was 2 months, but we still completed the season, and we had a Super Bowl. In 1987, they knocked out 3 games. They didn't even blink. They had replacement players, and they had a Super Bowl. Baseball, okay, we didn't have a World Series in 1994, but at least we had part of a baseball season, or even most of a regular season. I think they may have gone out in September, maybe a little earlier than that. But to have an entire season wiped out, yeah, and things, what's a year? What does it mean? It means nothing. The league came back, and it's doing pretty well now. So there's that. And, yes, there apparently will be a celebration, I'm sure, for the 50th season next year. Also, this was in relation to a story I was referencing about how the team almost became the Pandas, where they had a Name the Team contest starting in January of 1974. 11,000 submissions, 700 different names. Comets was the top choice, and Abe Poland said, nah, we're going to go with Capitals, and the rest is history. The other thing that I was just yakking about was a story I saw in the Post about how college admissions are changing. And my friend Mike sent me a note saying, yes, I remember when I was at Wheaton High School, he's about my age, went to school in the 70s, there was an announcement over the loudspeaker, please come to the cafeteria if you're interested in signing up for Maryland. And my wife says that the way it worked was your SAT scores and your GPA had to match up. The higher your GPA, the lower your SAT could be, which, you know, for some people, if you have a low grade point average, you're probably going to have low SATs. But some people just aren't really good test takers either. You know, some people are really smart and they just don't do well on the standardized tests, and so that hurts them, and vice versa. So she says, yes, you could have a C average with a D. You needed to do really well on the SATs, and that probably didn't happen. So good, we have people to correct us on things, and that's one of the hallmarks of PTI is at the end of the show. They used to have Tony Reale, who they called Stat Boy, and he would make corrections, but they do corrections at the end of the show. So those are the corrections from last hour, and we move on to the Commanders, who are 6-point underdogs going into Sunday's game at Seattle. And we played some of the audio earlier this week of Chase Young showing up in San Francisco and, not really laying the lumber to the Commanders, but making it clear how happy he is to be in a place where people really care about winning. And he also said that the defensive schemes are more detailed. Well, good luck with that, because one of the problems here with Chase Young was he wasn't following the script. He was doing his own thing, trying to get sacks. So we'll see how that works out. But he went out of his way to talk about the culture and how the culture is different and how guys expect to win and so forth and so on. So Ron Rivera yesterday at his news conference asked by Scott Abraham of Channel 7 about his own culture, and not specifically saying, how do you feel about what Chase said, but he did address it and completely took the high road.
I'm excited about our football team. I like the things that we're doing. I like the direction we're headed. I think culturally it's a really solid place. We're still learning and growing. We have a young quarterback that's learning and growing for us. And I do think that for the most part, things can be very bright for us if it continues to go in the right direction. And as far as, Chase is concerned in his comments, I really appreciate who he is for us and who he was for us. Did some nice things, and just wish him all the luck in San Francisco.
Yep. Total high road there. There's no other place to go than that. So good for him for saying this. The offense has looked significantly better, I think, in the last 2 weeks. I'd like to see him run the ball a little bit more. But what they're doing now with Sam Howell seems to be working. And they have made some changes on the offensive line. They got Tyler Larson now starting at center. They've shuffled a few things around, and things are working well. This is Rivera on what he's seen from his improved offense the last 2 weeks.
Some of the things that we did up front with the offensive line seem to be paying off. I think getting the ball out of Sam's hands quicker, creates that the ball's out. Frustration for the defense when a guy gets the ball out early and on timing, there's a little bit of frustration that seems to develop. And then overall, the guy's understanding. I mean, you see some of the things that we've been seeing from the backs and from the tight ends that are chipping their way out. We even got a couple snaps where we have the receivers chipping, and all understanding just how important it is. And it's all kind of coming together, I think, at the right time for us offensively.
Well, they are in a position to make a run at the playoffs, which I didn't feel a couple of weeks ago, but now they're 4-5, and if they win at Seattle, they're in it at 5-5, and they're battling a team that they're competing with to make the playoffs. Now, as far as what they're doing offensively, it's still pass happy. And Michael Phillips, who I don't know what happened at the Richmond Times-Dispatch, but I thought he was one of their best people. He's an outstanding reporter. And he's now working for the Washington Times. Matthew Parrish left and went to New Orleans, and looks like Phillips is taking his place. But he writes more like a columnist, and he's got some really interesting numbers on what they're doing with Eric Bieniemy in that they are still very much a pass-happy offense. They throw the ball 65% of the time on 1st and 10. That's the 5th highest rate in the NFL, a spot ahead of the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. Howell is on pace to drop back to throw 795 times this season. That would be an NFL record. Howell leads the league in passes of 10 yards or fewer with 251 such completions. Reed's quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, in Kansas City is second with 241. So he's more Mahomes than Mahomes right now. And on fourth down with 2 yards or fewer, the Commanders have passed on 5 of those 7 attempts. They are throwing the football, and that's going to be more difficult this week in Seattle, where, as we know, the noise can be deafening, but Rivera says they got a game plan for that. They will be prepared.
A lot of that stuff will be based off of, hand signals and stuff like that as well. It's understanding what the play call is and then what the alerts or the checks are. And again, that will all have to be, dictated by what's going on with the hand signals. We've played at some pretty noisy places this year for the most part. We've worked a lot, with the no huddles and just using all the hand signals and stuff like that. So that's probably the biggest thing is, everybody's got to be able to pay attention. Everybody's got to be able to see what they see and be on the same page more so than anything else. And the better you are at that, the less likely there will be a mistake or a miss signal or a call or something. And again, as far as our offensive line is concerned, they've just got to be patient and hopefully, we won't have any illegal procedures.
Look, there have been days at FedEx Field, maybe they'll happen again, maybe not, but there were days where the offensive line for the home team had to use a silent snap count. It happened against Pittsburgh. I'm sure it's happened against Philadelphia. So they're probably kind of used to this and probably won't have much of a problem with it, but the crowd noise is going to be a factor. Now, Howell, he's making his 11th NFL start, and he says the loudest place he's played is in Denver. Well, he's only played a few road games, but I guess louder than Philadelphia. And he has said that the loudest stadium that he's ever been in is the stadium at Virginia Tech. He said Virginia Tech was the loudest stadium that he played in. But his whole deal, and everybody continues to compliment on this, he never gets too high and he never gets too low. Asked again yesterday why that's the case, he said.
I guess you could say it's kind of how my dad always coached me to be. But yeah, as far as I can remember, it's kind of how I've always been. My dad would always tell me it's always about the next thing. It's not about what just happened. It's always about what you're going to do after it. You're never judged for the mistakes you make. You're judged for how you respond to those mistakes.
Yep. Turn the page. He's good at that. Now, back to Bieniemy and more of what Michael Phillips wrote today. This is something I had not heard, but he says there's speculation that he's on the short list next year for openings with the Saints, the Patriots, the Cowboys, and the Chargers. Interesting. I would think the Chargers might be the most interesting because, NFC West, or AFC West, which he's been a part of before. The Cowboys situation, I don't know. Jerry, if he's got a guy who's willing to comply, I don't know if he's necessarily going to make a change. Mike McCarthy is not a good head coach. He doesn't handle the clock well. What happened on Sunday in their game was just unbelievable how they had a chance to put that away and couldn't do it. Just one bungle after another. And, Dak Prescott taking a sack late, which you just can't, like a veteran guy like that. So I don't know if he would make a change, but, Bieniemy to the Cowboys might be interesting. Saints, okay. Patriots. Now, Patriots, that's one of those jobs where I guess if you're Eric Bieniemy and it's offered and it's the only offer that you have to become a head coach, you take it. But there's that old thing, you don't want to follow a legend. Now, it might be easier to follow a legend, and there's even speculation that if the Patriots lose this week, and they're playing in Germany, if they lose, that Bill Belichick is out. As incredible as that sounds, a guy with 6 Super Bowl championships, if they lose to the Colts, now the Colts stink, but if they lose to the Colts in Frankfurt, Germany, he might as well stay over there and get himself some lederhosen because they have had enough, and Bob Kraft is ready to pull the trigger if they lose that game. I don't think they're going to lose that game, and even if they do, I don't think they're going to fire him, but that's speculation. If you're Eric Bieniemy, and I don't think at this point, he's 54 years old, I don't think he waits if he's offered that job to see if something else comes along. But that old saying about following a legend, you don't want to do it. And unless you're something of a legend yourself, like when Don Shula was pushed out the door and some of the pushing came from Jimmy Johnson, well, Johnson took over, but he already had 2 Super Bowl championships, so it's a little different. Your first time, and what happened here with Richie Pettibone, who I think is one of the great defensive coordinators of all time, when Joe Gibbs retired the first time in 1992, and he retired off a team that actually won a playoff game. They had a disappointing regular season. They finished 9-7, backed into the playoffs, and won a wild card game at Minnesota before losing at San Francisco, and then he stepped down. He stepped down in March. They gave it to Pettibone, and Pettibone was already something of a legend here for the defense, and Gibbs gave him a lot of credit, but the season was a disaster. They went 4-12, and Richie never coached again. And I think if you're Eric Bieniemy, you might want to look at that and go, yeah, I know that things have declined under Belichick in recent years, but his shadow is still large there. Do I want to go to New England? There's also this from the Phillips column on Bieniemy, and I think this is something that I had not heard. Maybe you heard this as well, but we all know that he applied for many, many jobs as the offensive coordinator. And the speculation that I have read and heard is that people looked at him as somebody who was just benefiting from being next to Andy Reid and wasn't calling the plays. Like they said, well, you don't really have experience as a play caller. I don't know if we can install you as head coach. This is what Phillips writes. Bieniemy has shown the candor that has reportedly rubbed teams the wrong way during his head coaching interviews. He ran a tough training camp and takes no nonsense from players demanding intense work. Could it be that when he's interviewing for these jobs, he's a little too honest with the people who could potentially employ him? Maybe he could say, you don't want to sugarcoat anything, it would seem. But when an owner says, what do you want to do here? And he says, well, I've looked at your organization and this, and this stinks. Maybe that's part of it. Or an owner would say, would you be willing to have me? No. And so that brings me back to the Dallas job. If he's that honest, does he want to go work for Jerry Jones, who likes to meddle, likes to sit in the meeting rooms, is the one who gives out the injury report after games, who is the general manager? He doesn't hide that. He says, I'm the general manager first and the owner second. So I wonder about Dallas for him, which would leave, if you knock out the Patriots and you knock out the Cowboys, Saints or Chargers. I don't know. Either one might make sense. I would think that maybe the Chargers because of his experience in the AFC West. But that would be it. But we also have the possibility that he stays here. He stays on as head coach. Now, John Feinstein had this yesterday, and I disagree with this. He said they ought to make Bieniemy the head coach next year and have him help select a general manager. I say no. I say Bieniemy remains under contract. He's got a 2-year deal as the offensive coordinator. So when you fire Ron Rivera, you don't fire Eric Bieniemy. You bring in general manager candidates and you say, what do you think of Eric Bieniemy as a head coach? You got to have an open mind to this too. You can't rule him out just in case he doesn't want him. If he wants Bieniemy, okay, you say, how's this going to work? But the general manager has to run the team. You can't have a team that's run the way this one is, where Rivera has final say. Otherwise, you wind up with, a draft that's been, this year just bleh. And generally speaking, the acquisitions that he's made over the years, aside from Sam Howell, and I don't think you can completely close the book on that either, have been, bad. And Chase Young, as the number 2 pick of the draft, I guess a lot of teams would have taken him in the number 2 spot. But that didn't work out. And had maybe you done a little bit more due diligence on that, you might have realized why it wasn't going to work out. Coming up, Jeannie Buss talking to Graham Bensinger, who does celebrity interviews, about an allegation that Dennis Rodman made that the two of them were dating. What Jeannie has to say about that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Got Tony coming up at 11 o'clock today. There's a story that Rex just sent me during the break, which I will plow through. It makes me chuckle about how the NFL is such a week-to-week league, and what we were talking about with Sam Howell 3 weeks ago suddenly is a lot different, and all it took was a win over a bad team on the road on Sunday. Just really amazing. But Jeannie Buss, as you know, is the owner of the Lakers, inheriting the team from her father, Dr. Jerry Buss, who bought the team from Jack Kent Cooke in 1980 and drove them to incredible success during the Magic Johnson years and beyond that with Kobe and Shaq. They were, I guess you could argue the Celtics too, but they're the greatest team in NBA history. I think they're the closest thing to the Yankees in the NBA. And Jeannie Buss did an interview with Graham Bensinger. I like his work. He really works hard at it. He's got a syndicated show, so it's not a network show. It's something that they put usually as filler, like on Masson. You'll see it sometimes now on Monumental. It's it's a good sit-down interview show, and he often makes news with it, and he's made a little bit of news here. Seems that Dennis Rodman in September did an interview with Vlad TV, and Dennis Rodman, who is always looking for attention, said that he was dating Jeannie Buss for about 6 months, and that's what led to Kobe and Shaq not liking him. And in 2000, he was cut, and he wound up finishing his career with the Dallas Mavericks. He was probably done at that point anyway. Dennis Rodman didn't get into the NBA till he was 25 years old, so he was in his 40s then, or pushing 40 at that point. But he said it was hard. This is Rodman. It was hard because I knew that Kobe and Shaq wouldn't like me. I know because I saw Jerry Buss. He loved me. I used to date his daughter. He said he was dating his daughter for 6 months, and that he says that Kobe and Shaq didn't like all of the attention that Rodman was getting. Well, Rodman drew his own attention, and I don't think most people knew that he was dating Jeannie Buss. And as a matter of fact, he really wasn't dating Jeannie Buss. This is how she explained it as she did the interview with Graham Bensinger.
How about the best Dennis Rodman dating story?
Like that, I did not date Dennis Rodman. I did. He became a member of the Lakers.
Because he came out and said that.
Yeah,
yes.
I guess, in other words, when my dad brought on Dennis Rodman to the team, it was kind of like, let's make sure that we know where he is at all times. So, like, if it's about, hey, where are you going to be tonight? Okay, we're all going to this restaurant, or we're going to this club, or we're going to this beach, or we're going to wherever Dennis is going to be. You could say it was dating to say that it was, making sure that I had an eye on him.
Babysitting. That's what she was doing, just making sure. He only played 23 games with the Lakers. He wasn't there that long, and then they shuffled him off. So that's part of the Dennis Rodman story, is you got to keep an eye on where he is. That was all part of the documentary, the 10-part documentary that was done a few years ago. So, I don't think that was that they were an item. She seems to be smarter than that. She was engaged to Phil Jackson for quite a while, and they announced their split on social media in December of 2016. She's married to Jay Moore, the comedian. Jay Moore was a pretty high-profile guy for a while. I think he's kind of dropped off the radar, but they got married in September. They got engaged in December of 2022 and are now married, and we're seeing smooching at the opener on November 1st with the Lakers playing the Clippers. So she's apparently happy now, and I don't think she was ever going to date Dennis Rodman. I don't think that they were really compatible, I don't think. Not that I know a lot about these things, but that would have been, wow, that would have been a stunner. And I think at the time she was dating Phil Jackson, wasn't she? Because, Phil was coaching the Lakers in his first go-round at that point. Remember, he coached them from 99 to 2004, then sat out a year, wrote a book, ripped the hell out of Kobe, then came back and coached him again from 2005 to 2011. They won 5 championships. Yeah, I think he won 5 championships with Kobe in 2 different spots. First with the Shaq group, and then 2 more. So good for him. So Rex sent me this thing, and it's from CBS Sports. Now, what were we talking about with Sam Howell a couple of weeks ago? Well, he gets sacked all the time. You can't stay in the NFL getting sacked as often as Sam Howell does. That's a flaw in his game, and maybe it's a fatal flaw in his game. You can't have that. Played pretty well against Philadelphia here. They lost. They went to New England, a terrible team, and they won. Sacks are down, but not significantly down. He still took 3 sacks last week against New England. Now, he did take only 1 against Philadelphia. There's some progress on that. But this is the nature of the week-to-week nature. That's redundant. This is how the week-to-week nature of the NFL plays out. So there's a writer by the name of Chris Trapasso, Trapasso. I've heard of him. And his headline is, Commander Sam Howell could challenge for being the best late-round quarterback since Tom Brady. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay? I guess if you say 5th round or later is considered late round, would you say 4th round is mid-round? Would you say that, Rex? I mean, 4th round?
I guess. I guess what is it, day 2, day 3? What's the
breakdown now? But that's also newer. That's only last. Well, maybe it's been a while
since Brady.
Yeah, but Brady was in the was a 6th round pick.
So that's day 3.
That was day 2 then.
Okay.
Yeah, they would have the 1st or 2nd round. I forget. One time they would do. They shortened it from 12 rounds to 8 rounds at 93, and 94 it became 7 rounds. And then they realized, geez, the ratings are fabulous. Let's spread this out over prime time, over 3 nights. So depending on how you define it,
I'd say that 5th round and later is fair.
Okay,
so late round.
So that's a day 3 now. That's when they do it, right?
Yeah.
It's first. Well, it's first round, the first night, and then what? Second, third, and second and 4th.
I think it's 2nd and
3rd, right?
Yeah.
So 4th round and later would be late round. Okay. Well, depending on how you define it, you jump in the gun here. Now, it's true. Mark Rippon had only one really great year. Had a couple of good years though in Washington. Was not really a 1-year wonder when he won the Super Bowl MVP. But a 6th rounder winning a Super Bowl, I think, is a little bit above. He's doing this on projection. I understand that, but a 5th rounder who started 10 games and this year is 4-5 on the season, so he's 5-5 in his career and maybe on his way to being the most sacked quarterback of all time. But he said, and this is Trapasso writing here, in reality, a combination of those 3 things has probably led to a relative under-the-radar feel of Howell's 2nd year in the NFL. But Howell currently has the highest grade, this is his grading, in my weekly young quarterback evaluation series. Not that we should, post that on a billboard or anything, but okay, that's how he looked at it. He says, among those passers with at least 100 attempts to date, a higher grade than Brock Purdy and, yes, C.J. Stroud. Don't forget he enters Week 10 2nd in the NFL in passing yards. That could be something due to the way Bieniemy is calling it. He does have very good wide receivers who have stayed healthy. That not a lot of teams are not in that position. Justin Jefferson has been out 4 weeks with a hamstring injury, I believe. So not everybody has all those weapons that he's had. And he writes, starting the new millennium in the year 2000, there have been 169 quarterbacks selected in the 4th round or later. The widely considered greatest quarterback in NFL history, Tom Brady, was one of them, famously picked at 199 in the 6th round by the Patriots in 2000. Since then, the hit rate on those late-round passers has, to be blunt, brutal. Now, some have serviceable backups and spot starters have found in round 4 and beyond over the past 24 drafts. Of course, quarterbacks of legitimate long-term substance, franchise passers, not really, only a few really. And he lists Kirk Cousins as one of them, who was taken in the 4th round after Robert Griffin III went in the 1st round in 2012. Then Dak Prescott, Cowboys' 4th round pick in 2016, and maybe Brock Purdy, who the 49ers made Mr. Irrelevant in 2022. Can't forget Ryan Fitzpatrick, a 7th rounder picked by St. Louis in 2005, the ultimate journeyman going around the league, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're way early in this process. Don't you? I mean...
Yeah, but the point he's making, it's a low bar.
It is a low bar. Okay, I'll give you that. Also, it's circumstance. It's this franchise, which has swung and missed so many times on quarterbacks that he got this opportunity to play. How many of these guys go through their careers and don't really get the opportunity? Like Jacoby Brissett, for example. He's been a starter before and really hasn't played well enough for other teams to go, whoa, 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 everybody missed on him. We got to make him a starter. But, maybe Howell winds up in that position too, where he's playing only because he has to play. And how many guys really get set up like this, where his first game is against the Cowboys, who are really disinterested? Anybody who wants to say, the Cowboys were playing for home field. No, they weren't. They were totally disinterested in that game. And he threw only 19 passes. He wasn't spectacular. Then he gets the whole off season off of that one performance. How many fifth-rounders get that much of a look? Off that one performance against Dallas, the whole offseason, Sam Howell's our guy. Howell's our guy. And because of the uncertainty of ownership, they could do that. And you didn't have, for once, Snyder banging on the window, get me a quarterback. And you also, because they've been really stinky for a long time, have been able to load up on wide receivers. They got lucky with McLaurin in the third round, but they used the first rounder to take Jahan Dotson. They signed Curtis Samuel as a free agent, paid him some significant money. So a lot of things have gone his way. You can say the offensive line was a disaster. It's been bad. They haven't done a good job of that. But, a lot of things have happened for him that have gone in the right direction. I'm not saying that he can't wind up being a really good starting quarterback in the NFL. Will he be a franchise quarterback, do you think? Have you seen enough of that? I haven't.
I'm optimistic. I mean, it's more about the feel. It's the offense doesn't feel like it's like a grind. Like it's like
okay, yeah, and there is now. Drew Brees was a second-round pick, but if you look at Drew Brees, his first years, remember the Chargers off his first 3 years, might have been 3 years, that they made a pick to take what's his name, the quarterback who played for the Chargers forever, Phillip Rivers. They took him in the first round, high in the first round. They actually, flipped him because they had the number one pick. They took Eli and wound up taking Rivers because they were unconvinced that Brees could play. And Brees got hurt in the final game of the first season of Rivers, and that made their decision easy because it was a shoulder injury that sometimes ended careers. It didn't, and he flourished in New Orleans. But it was a 3 or 4 year process before that happened. Can Howell get to that? Yeah, maybe. We'll see. The one thing he doesn't seem to have, at least publicly, is a great ability to lead. Now that may work behind the scenes. Who knows? And he doesn't get rattled, and they're all raving about that. But I don't know if he can be the alpha guy that these franchise quarterbacks are. But that's the nature of the league. If this came out 2 weeks ago, you go, what is this guy smoking? Now he gets a win over a bad team, plays well against a good team, and all of a sudden, the best late-round pick since the greatest late-round pick in the history of football. Let's see. Let's pump your brakes a little bit on that. All right, Tony's got a show coming up. We'll do Football Friday stuff tomorrow. Got a 3-hour show for you then, and all kinds of good stuff. Thanks to Rex Minturn for running the show. Thanks to all of you listening. Sorry we couldn't get Joe Posnanski today, but I'll circle back and get him next week. Stay tuned. Tony is coming up next. I'll see you tomorrow, 9 a.m.